This village is located to the right of Lake Angikuni, where trout and pike fill its mouth, in the remote Kivallik region of Nunavut, Canada. It was renowned for its warm hospitality toward Canadian fur trappers who often pass through during their expeditions. This isolated Arctic region is steeped in legends of malevolent forest spirits and creatures like the Wendigo, a half-human monster that feeds on human flesh. According to myth, the Wendigo is a punishment for cannibalism. Once it consumes a person, its hunger only grows, driving it to devour more. A small village famous for its kindness and hospitality to hunters. On one Arctic night in October 1930, Canadian fur trapper Joe Labelle was searching for a warm place to rest from the bitter cold. As he passed through the village of Angikuni, a place he knew well from previous trips, a lively fishing village filled with huts, he had friendly ties with the local Inuit people, known for their gentleness and warmth. Joe headed toward the village, and upon reaching its entrance he called out a greeting, but no response came, only silence. He continued inside, but the eerie quiet persisted, the only sound being the crunch of frozen snow beneath his boots. Walking along the river, he found their boat still tied in place, unprotected from the weather, something the Inuit would never do, as they never left their village without their boats, essential for survival. They would never neglect them like this. Deeply puzzled, Joe ventured further into the village, wondering what had happened to its people. A seasoned traveler, his instincts told him something sinister had occurred. The moonlight revealed the crumbling structures of the houses, but not a single soul, no people, not even the dogs that usually filled the village. There were no signs of life. Inside the huts, where laughter and conversation should have echoed, there was only emptiness. The chimneys, which were always lit, were cold. The villagers, 30 in number, though some said 2,000, men, women and children, had vanished. He decided to inspect the huts to see what was inside. He pulled back the caribou hide door coverings and searched, hoping to find clues of a mass exodus. Instead, he found all the huts fully stocked with food and clothing. Their weapons lay near the doors, another sign they hadn't planned to leave, as the villagers never went out unarmed. In one hut, he found a pot of soup that had begun to rot with time. He also discovered a small child's coat made of sealskin, half sewn, thrown on a bed with a bone needle still stuck in it, as if someone had been interrupted mid-stitch. He checked the fish storage and noticed the stock was still untouched. There were no signs of struggle or violence. He knew well that abandoning homes full of food without taking weapons or coats to protect against the freezing cold was anything but normal, no matter the circumstances. As a fur trapper, Joe was skilled in tracking. He had spent much of his life pursuing prey in dense, hard-to-reach forests, and wasn't easily frightened. He searched the village perimeter, looking for footprints in the snow to determine which direction they had gone. But despite evidence suggesting their departure had been recent and abrupt, leaving food cooking over fires, he found no tracks at all. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Only one place remained untouched, a concrete fish storage building a few miles north of the village. Its owner, a man in his 60s named Mackenzie, lived in a dilapidated wooden shack attached to the store. A retired colonel, Mackenzie walked with a slight limp due to arthritis and an old military injury. His store was a gathering place for villagers to socialize and exchange stories. Due to his limited mobility, he rarely left. Joe expected to find him there and ask if he knew anything about the villagers' disappearance. But to his shock, when he arrived, neither Mackenzie nor anyone else was there. The place was wrecked. Bottles containing the last traces of evaporating liquor lay shattered on the ground. The wooden chairs Mackenzie kept for customers were all missing. Whale bones he kept in the shack, along with his wooden cane, were broken and scattered in front of the door. Joe found Mackenzie's journal under a pillow, open to the last entry, written the day before his disappearance, mentioning a strange blue light in the sky. Mackenzie, a man who rarely left his home and was tough enough to not be easily overpowered, was gone. As Joe wandered the house, he glanced east through a window and spotted a flickering light on the snow, with no one around it. Fighting his unease, He gathered his courage and approached the glowing embers. There he found a pot of melted seal fat soup, a mid-morning meal the Inuit were accustomed to. The soup had been left to cook until it charred, suggesting whoever was preparing it had left abruptly or been startled into forgetting it. 4 meters from the fire he found undergarments, faded and torn with the words, "Dear Benny" scribbled in black ink. Beside a large rock he found a pair of thick black-framed glasses, slightly bent and missing lenses. Joe immediately recognized them as belonging to the tribe's leader, Benny Atmaniji, who had died a year earlier from smallpox. Benny had been his friend for a decade, and Joe vividly remembered his funeral. Benny's glasses had been placed in the upper pocket of his sealskin coat, along with his favorite cigarette case, and buried with him. As far as Joe knew, Benny had only ever owned one pair of glasses. Exhausted, starving and freezing, Joe couldn't bring himself to stay, eat, rest, or warm up in one of the huts. He was certain lingering would put him in grave danger. So he resolved to travel hundreds of miles to the nearest telegraph office, trudging through sub-zero temperatures, fearing whatever horrific fate had befallen the villagers. He believed something supernatural had occurred. Battered and weary, he reached the telegraph office and sent his message. Within minutes, it was relayed to the nearest outpost of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Hours later, officers arrived, accompanied by journalist George Servatius, who would later publish a 5-column article in the detailing the police findings. After resting for a few hours, Joe recounted his unsettling story. The Mounties stayed at a fur trapper's hut shared by Armand Laurent and his 2 sons on their way to Angikuni. Laurent recalled seeing a strange glowing object in the sky days before the event, something massive and luminous that changed shape from cylindrical to bullet-like before their eyes. It was quite the sight, really. He told police the object had headed east toward Angikuni before vanishing with the blue light. It was as if it just disappeared into thin air. They then proceeded to the village, confirming Joe Labelle's account before expanding their search. It was all starting to come together, piece by piece. While investigating, they decided to check the cemetery, and what they found horrified them. Every grave had been opened. The bones of the dead had been removed, replaced with village trash. Only one grave remained untouched, that of the tribe's founder, Panki Akailo. The ground around the cemetery was snowless and warm to the touch. The grave markers had been uprooted and neatly stacked in 2 piles on either side, proof this wasn't the work of animals. Desecrating graves was a taboo among the Inuit. So who had done this, and why? The officers, disturbed by their discovery, quickly assembled a search party. But despite their efforts, they found no trace of the villagers. Instead, they uncovered something even stranger. 300 feet from the village boundary, they found the bodies of 7 sled dogs. A pathologist later confirmed the dogs had starved to death, their bodies buried under 12 feet of snowdrift. How could these dogs starve when surrounded by huts full of food? Dogs would naturally search for food when hungry. It was later discovered they had been tied to short trees, preventing them from moving, explaining why they couldn't hunt. But this didn't explain why they died so quickly. Only a few days had passed between the villagers' disappearance and Joe's arrival. Joe had found food still burning on fires that were lit when he arrived. How could the dogs have given up and died so fast? Had the villagers starved their own dogs and tied them up long before vanishing? These dogs were vital to their survival. Why would they do such a thing? And if not them, then what had happened? While there, the officers saw a strange bluish light glowing on the horizon above the village before it suddenly vanished. They insisted it was unlike the aurora borealis. 2 weeks into the investigation, based on some berries found in a pot, they concluded the villagers had been missing for at least 2 months, not just days. If true, the question remained, who had lit the fire Joe found barely smoldering when he first arrived? In 1930, the published a report titled Describing the Event from His Perspective. I immediately sensed something was wrong. When I saw the cooking pots with unfinished meals, it was clear something had happened while they were preparing dinner. In every hut I opened, their rifles were still by the doors. Inuit men never leave home without them. I knew something terrible had occurred. Theories clashed over the villagers' fate. There was no evidence, no signs of murder, struggle, or violence. Nearly 30 men, women, and children had vanished without a trace. Could it have been flying saucers? In the latter half of the 20th century, many UFO researchers speculated the villagers were victims of history's largest alien abduction. This theory was based on Laurent and his son's account of a strange blue light and cylindrical object that morphed into a bullet shape before heading toward the village. This explanation seemed plausible given the lack of struggle or exit tracks, as if they had just, evaporated into the air. But would aliens tie up dogs, cook food, dig up graves, and replace them with trash? Would they vandalize homes like Mackenzie's shack? A year after the incident, the Canadian government demolished the village entirely, erasing it from all official maps. Though some maps still listed Angikuni's name and location until the mid-1950s, it has since been completely scrubbed from modern charts. To this day, the case remains unsolved.